One of the greatest things we were able to do is we'd been talking for a long time, maybe about 3 years, about having a place that we could come together, that we could work on just transition principles, that we could work on indigenous knowledge and bring our elders together with our young children and teach them traditional ways. And I just happened to run across the most beautiful 11 acres you ever saw in Southwest Louisiana. And the problem was it had a pipeline running through it, or was supposed to run through it, the Bayou Bridge pipeline. We were able to collect enough donations to buy that land that was in the path, and we stood strong on that land, and it was the only land that was not affected by the Bayou Bridge pipeline. They went around us. They were scared, rightfully so. In the meantime, we were working with landowners, and landowners had invited us to come out and be on their land. And so what you're going to see here in just a little bit, hopefully, is what happened in the swamp on land that we were invited to be on. In fact, very rarely were we not on land that we had permission to be on or invited to be there. And that's because they saw that we had that success really early on, that we were able to say we didn't want them there. And we said, when you stand strong together and in community, you can stop these pipelines. And by seeing that example, more and more landowners came out and said, can you please come to my land? Can you please protect me? And we did. We fought off the Bayou Bridge pipeline for close to 2 years. Yeah. And we threw everything at them but the kitchen sink. In fact, I think one time there was a kitchen sink. Just kidding, there wasn't. But that was that diversity of tactics that we were proud to say. We had a beach party. We played soccer out on the easement. We had something called Crawfish the Musical, which was a full musical involving crawfish. For some reason, it terrified them if we masked up. But if you mask up and you put on a red crawfish hat, it makes their whole damn day. I don't understand. We actually had workers that clapped at the end. They were so happy for us, you know. Yeah. We worked in navigable waterways and had kayaks out there for a month, a solid 46 days. We had people and kayakers that couldn't leave, and that was following the law. We did nothing wrong. The law says that you can be on navigable waterways, so we just stayed there and swam around a lot. Had some good time, good music and good food while we were at it. But you know, they had some diversity of tactics too. They came up with some things themselves. One of them was these anti-protest laws that are around, right? So as of August, we started getting felonies. I have 2 felonies myself, looking at 10 years in prison if those charges were to go through. So now we're fighting that bigger fight along with 14 other states out there that have passed these laws. And we're challenging those laws on constitutional grounds in court. They also at one point tried to sink our boats out in the middle of the swamp. We had 15 people out in 3 boats, and they came and swamped us and sunk everything that we had. And we got up and dusted ourselves off and pulled our boats out of the bottom of the swamp, and we kept going, because that's what you do. The intimidation was something that was harder to deal with, and if we get the movie going, you'll be able to see a little bit more.
You're doing great.
I'm doing great? Or the movie's doing? Oh, okay. Yeah, some of the intimidation included physical acts of violence. I remember, and I'll tell you about it in the movie, but I remember one time coming home and it was dark outside and being dragged out to the field and beat. I remember at one point they had trapped me at a Sonic, and somebody put a knife to my throat and said that they were going to do unspeakable things to my kids, and that they were going to kill my friends, and they named my friends one at a time. At that point, I knew it was time for me to get out of there. I couldn't, even though I loved the Bayou, I couldn't put my kids through that. And so we went together again and went back to people, and we fundraised like hell. And we got enough money to buy a mountain. I mean, it's not a full mountain, you know, it's like the side of a mountain, but it's a safe place with the gate that we can be safe. We've had 23 activists come through there that are either in trouble, worried, concerned about their safety in their homelands, or they just need to sleep. I know you're tired. We're all so fucking tired, you know? And so having that place that you can get behind and you don't have to worry about somebody coming after you, that's a joy. This is what I talk about when I'm talking about leveraging the battle, right? We lost the war, but God damn it, we won the battles, many of them, you know? And that's what we have to do, I think, like looking forward here. We have the climate struggle, we have the migrant struggle, and the EJ. And I can tell you from my perspective, any climate struggle or any struggle at all that doesn't take into effect the children who are being lost from their homes because of drought, walking across countries, coming into this country and then dying on the floor of a cage is no climate movement, right? If you are involved in a movement, whether it's for the forests or for the oceans, and you're not considering black and brown people who are next to these refineries breathing in these airs that have asthma rates and cancer rates astronomical, you are not in a movement. You are working on an issue. So now we can see that there's a good chance, to be real with you, that we are past, I don't care what the scientists say, that we are past what we can do to protect this planet in its entirety. And so now we have to look at what it means to reduce harm and to leverage the battles that we have to get the most amount of good for the most amount of affected people, right? That means terrifying, scaring, I should say, the establishment and the systems as they stand. Because by shaking the foundation of those systems in a manner that's consistent of solidarity with all of these other groups will in fact affect change. It's honestly the only thing that ever has. And I agree with Ruddy. When it comes down to it, solidarity is radical revolution, and radical revolution is about allowing people to be their authentic self in their movement. I always say it, I said it on the movie you're about to see, but you can't tell a rabbit how to get itself out of the mouth of the coyote. That is not your job. You go after the coyote, and then we'll know whose side you're on. Lastly, I can say that the blood of my people have been in this land since time immemorial. That indigenous leadership is the single most important thing in this movement. And I'm not saying that because of the fact that we're so strong or we're so, it's not some beautiful heroic idea, right? I'm saying that literally in this land, our blood has been here the longest and we've been fighting the hardest and we know it the best. And if nothing else, then we know that we know how to survive. And the truth of the matter is, y'all are in some trouble here, right? So I'm saying look towards indigenous leadership. We've always been here. We're always going to be here. We're going to protect this land, and we know how to survive catastrophe like in no one else. But it's not enough for you to do a land acknowledgement. At the beginning, you need to form relationships with us. You need to see how we interact with each other, because the truth of the matter is we didn't need a lot of the systems that were here before. And I was based on relationships and our love that we have for each other and for our mother. It is time to go back. It's time to go back to the heart of what we are as a people, as human people. And that is the radical revolution. And that's all I got, except for the movie. And I stuck with 10 minutes.
Your name?
Yeah, my name's Cherri Foytlin.
Okay, what do you do?
Well, I live in Atacapa, Eshok lands. We have the Loe La Vie camp, and we're fighting the No Bayou Bridge pipeline down in Louisiana. And then we work on a lot of environmental justice issues across the country.
So, you're an environmentalist, and you're doing these protests, and okay, civil disobedience, that's been going on for years and years and years. But now all these felonies, could you tell us what's going on with all these felonies?
Yeah, so what happened was the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, has been going around to all these states. I think they're up to 14 states now, and they're trying to pass these laws, and these laws put restrictions, like very tight restrictions on
what they're doing is they're calling pipelines critical infrastructure. And so it's like a water or like, water mains and things like that, right? So by making it that, they're making it a felony to be on them. So we actually had permission to be on the land, and Bayou Bridge Pipeline did not have permission to be on the land. But we still got charged with felonies. So now I have 2 felonies through this law that went through in August in Louisiana. And the laws are just being shopped around to whatever state. They've been shut down in a few states, but for the most part, they just get picked up because they have people there that they basically write the laws, and then the people present the laws, the congressman, paid for congressman. And you look at every one of those congressmen and they have buku dineros coming straight from the oil industry itself, or ALEC, So the whole point is they're circumventing our right to protest in a corporate way that puts restrictions on us that potentially could carry up. For us, it's up to 20 years. I have 2 felonies right now. That's 10 years in jail.
So let's give some context to that. So who invited you to the land?
Yeah.
And first, who invited you to the land?
Yeah, so I remember her name, and I don't want to say her name without permission, but I can say that the landowner that had the land, the property itself, was the people that invited us to be there, asked us, not just invited us to be there, they asked us to defend that land. They asked us to not let this pipeline people go through because there was no easement. They didn't have permission to. They hadn't expropriated it. So we were legally on the land. They were not legally on the land, but yet we still got charged. And one of the ways that they did that was not only did they make the laws up to come against us, but they directly hired the police departments, the local police departments, to work for them. So when we were talking to them, they're all dressed like regular police, taxpayer-funded weapons and everything. We think we're talking to the police, and we're giving them a piece of paper that's saying we have the right to be there, but we're not. We're talking directly to the oil company, and then they use the power of the law of the people to arrest us and put us in jail and then charge us with these felonies.
Oh, wait, that's shocking to me.
Yeah.
So there's uniformed officers.
Right.
They were not being paid by the jurisdiction to be there. They were being paid by the oil company to be there?
Yeah, you know how officers, sometimes they'll go and they'll do like football games and things like that? Well, they're just being hired as security, not directly for the company because that looks too suspicious. What they do is they get a contractor that works for the company, and then they work for the contractor. But the thing is, they use all of our equipment, everything from the gas that the people put into the tank to the equipment that they use, and they don't look any different than there's nothing to show that they're working for the company at that time.
Let me ask you this, and it might be, I'll just ask you the question. It sounds to me like a little bit of conflict of interest because these people are going to be testifying as to what happened, right? So
right.
Could maybe you expound? I mean, could you expound, or maybe, is there a conflict of interest with that? I mean, when people are arrested there, are they going through all the due process, legal stuff?
Yeah, we even had people who were drug out of their canoes in a navigable waterway and then brought to the easement and then arrested on the easement by these cops that were not actually cops. They were working for the industry.
So to give more context, I'm sure people have seen movies about this and that, but you guys were being like arrested for being there. You weren't tearing stuff down. No. We were just on the easement and just holding that space. That's all we were doing. And then when they got there, the first thing they did was start telling us we were trespassing. We had paperwork showing, like a letter from the landowners saying, no, not only do we want them to be there, we want them to stop this pipeline. And it just didn't matter because the conflict of interest, because they actually were working for the companies themselves. They got to make up the laws in that time, They make up the big laws, the traditional laws, but then they're also making up their own ideas on the land, in that moment, and deciding who gets to go to jail and who doesn't. Now, in this case, we went to court after that. They went to court, and they found out, and the judge ruled absolutely right. There's no reason for Bayou Bridge to be there. They didn't expropriate the land. They didn't have it. And then he fined them $450. So they're getting fined $450 for breaking the law and having 20 and 30 people out on that easement that they weren't supposed to have there, and we're the one that's taking the hit as far as like going to prison. So you had permission to be there. They were breaking the law. But
the judge even said that they were breaking the law.
So is it the same judge?
It's the same judge.
He's still going to prosecute you.
The same judge that presided over that in these little parishes is going to be the ones that presides over the criminality of us being there.
people were occupying spaces, sort of like
Yeah.
in the same tradition as the civil rights movement.
We were trying to protect, from our perspective, we felt like we were trying to protect the law, as the law said, and then they manipulated the law and manipulated the enforcers of that law in order to gain basically money for them, or to give that input. And then they were backed up by the law by saying, oh, well, it's only a $450 fine. That to them is less than $1. I mean, that's just nothing to them, $450, And so who were the people that got let out? Who were the people that suffered from that? Not only just us who were on the ground, but these landowners who very clearly, I mean, what's it called? The bowels of the Constitution is supposed to be about who owns land, who has the right for land, but yet it was gutted and nobody said a word.
Well, thank you for that. I want to ask you an overarching question. You're at the Convergence. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a great convergence. People are coming together and it's fun, and we've been having some really deep strategy talks, which is a lot of times with these kinds of places you get together and you don't really, by the time you get to get past that initial where we're at, who's at the table, and we start to get down to strategy, it's time to let go. But in this case, there's been a lot of space, and I appreciate a lot of room for those other conversations to happen on the side, and then when we get into it, we can get down to brass tacks.
So that's great to hear,
Yeah.
because it was pitched as this is not just another conference.
Right.
So you think, has it lived up to that hype a little bit?
I mean, it's still conferencey. It still feels conferencey. But the difference is, I guess it makes a lot of difference who's in the room. And there's a lot of just really badass, people at the front line that are in the room here.
So just two more questions. One is, do you think there's seen a lot of old friends, right? Old familiar faces. See some new faces?
Oh yeah, we see a lot of old faces here, a lot of good friends, but we're making new friends. Yeah, there's a lot of young folks too that I really enjoy seeing young folk at these places.
Do you think there's new relationships being built?
Definitely. Yeah, we're definitely building new relationships and strengthening old ones.
So they better watch out, right?
Yeah, we know that.
Anything I didn't ask that you'd like to say?
No, I guess that's it. Just thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.